Welcome back to Newsmaker Live. Thank you very much for staying tuned. We're coming towards the end of the program this evening. We're here with Javed Samuel. Very insightful and a lot of information, useful information that can assist us in our daily lives. Ordinary citizens who use technology, and sometimes you don't even intend to use the technology, but because it is so prevalent and it's all around you, you have no choice in some circumstances or situations but to use it. Now, I want to talk about what you're hoping to come out of your experience here for yourself and also for those participants in that workshop. What is your idea? What do you hope that the participants will leave with? And for yourself, what are you hoping to see happen here on the island?
So in terms of the participants, the main thing I'd hope the participants live with is increased awareness of some of the security issues that they may face, whether they face it right now or in the future. So that's the main thing I'd want the participants to get out of it. I also want them to get out of it ways that they can test the system to ensure that it is as secure as they need it to be. And that's some of the feedback I've gotten from the participants, in that it sounds like some of the material would be very helpful for them as they go back to the environments, to be able to test and validate that are they actually doing all of this. And that's what the goal is, that they can go back and test it and fix it before someone exploits it. So that's the ideal scenario, where you can find it yourself, so the participants can find such issues or educate other people in the company on how to find such issues before someone malicious has actually executed it, has actually done it themselves. So that's what I want the participants to get out of it. And one of the main goals is increase awareness, so increase education on those topics, so that it's no longer something foreign, and it's something that you actually think about. So it's something that you have at the back of your mind. It's part of your overall thinking when building a new system, building a new application. And in terms of myself, what I did want to get out of it was a greater understanding of what's actually implemented in St. Lucia. I cannot claim to understand what's actually happening in St. Lucian, at St. Lucian companies or in the government or in St. Lucian systems. And what I do want to get out of it is that by talking to the participants and getting a much better understanding of what issues they currently face, it helps me put in a better position to figure out how best I can help going forward. So I am not under the illusion that I can just come there with stuff I've seen at a US client and just say, okay, we need to do that in St. Lucia. That would be naive. And I have used this opportunity to get a greater context of what are some of the issues that are faced right now and could be faced in the future. And that has been extremely beneficial to me, in that it's not something that I could learn from working in the US, or it's not something you could learn from reading a book or reading a newspaper. You do need to interact with people that are actually building that system. And that's what, in terms of Clinton asked earlier about going forward, that's what can help me in figuring out the best way I can contribute. I can make the maximum contribution to the island. So by understanding what's going on, I can make better recommendations. I can make better suggestions. I can help in terms of what the path forward might best be.
Now, I want to turn a little bit and focus on cyber wars, because more and more governments and states, especially those that are more advanced, they're moving away from conventional warfare and moving into cyber warfare. You see North Korea, South Korea, you see China, India, for example. I had a professor once who said that for the master's program in some Indian universities, the final project for those IT students would be to penetrate a US company, to infiltrate that company's system. How is technology and warfare connected, and how is that likely to change the world in terms of relations between states?
I get the point that cyber warfare is an issue right now, and it will become even more of an issue in the future. one of the examples that we discussed in the presentation was Stuxnet. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but
no, what is that?
Stuxnet was a virus, a very complicated set of vulnerabilities that it sort of acknowledged that it was the Israelis that used it to take out, to basically the goal of it was to set back the Iranian the Iranian nuclear program. So the options may have been a strike or create such a virus to basically knock back a few years to the nuclear program, which it did. And that was just an example of one that then became public after the fact, obviously. But and when actually analyzing, there were numerous papers that talked about analysis. It looked clear immediately that it was not done by just some run-of-the-mill criminal, but you would need state backing. And what to keep in mind with cyber warfare is that the resources available to states would be significant. So while your criminal is trying to attack your website, may only want to invest a few $1,000s into the attack, a government that needs to carry out a cyber warfare task will be prepared to invest tens of millions of dollars into it. And investing that much money will allow you to create attacks that you may not think are possible. And going back to the Stuxnet one, they found a number of issues that were not even publicly reported at that time. So it does leave you to wonder, like, what else is actually exploited right now and just not yet public. And obviously we have, like, as the public, we have no real context. But one thing to add, I don't want to necessarily scare the public with cyber warfare typing and like you think that your business is susceptible to that, is that the targets would generally be high value targets. So if you are a military installation, then you would want to ensure that you might be a target for such an event. So it's not that I don't personally think it will be arbitrary, but it will be something that becomes what do you want to describe, a more common model for warfare, where you decide to go after a country's like resources or country's like infrastructure. So infrastructure vulnerabilities are a bigger thing. You could all imagine, for example, if the power grid were to come down in St. Lucia and the chaos that would ensue. So we do rely on a lot of infrastructure, and an attacker, by taking down some of that infrastructure, who knows what will then happen.
And so, therefore, the technology aspect component is very important for those governments, and those states that are engaged actively in warfare. I mean, a country like the U.S., for example, how significant, or would you be aware of what, how significant their virtual attacks would be or factor into the system?
In terms of that, it's the public information for such events would be pretty restrictive, and I would say that all major developed countries would probably have both an attack and defense side. In terms of where they are, that's really hard to quantify, but you do know that a lot of money goes into such organizations, and anything leading or cutting edge, or a lot of leading and cutting edge developments would probably come from there first, because they have more money to spend. And again, going back to motives, economic motives for a company are generally you need to have a profit in the next quarter, you need to have a profit in the next year. Your economic incentives for a state are that you need to keep it safe for the next decade, for the next generation. So something that might not be practical for right now, and there's no too much commercial interest, might be worth investing from the military perspective. In that, while it might not be necessary for right now, it might be necessary in a few years or in 10 years, and the only way to get to it is if you invest in it right now. But like giving information on what's actually out there or not, no side will make anything public, and all you will do is have sides just basically blame each other. So another example, like the US there have been a number of like the Chinese but Chinese hacking and the reverse as well too. So you like in both sides saying it's state initiated or it's initiated from the respective country. And for those of you out there, if you're interested in, there was a pretty good report done by a security consulting firm Mandiant on their analysis of, that was published a few weeks ago, on their analysis of cyber warfare. It's basically from an American perspective, describing a cyber warfare group in China. So that was an enlightening read in terms of understanding what capabilities that such a group may have.
Great. Javed Samuel, cybersecurity expert, a local St. Lucian, MIT graduate, Oxford graduate as well. As I like to say, a super intelligent guy and blazing a trail in the US and in the industrialized world as far as technology and cybersecurity. Thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you all the best as you continue with your program here on St. Lucia. And just before we end, any final words?
I'd just like to thank you all for listening, and thank Clinton for having me on his show. And I enjoyed the discussion that we had. I hope that you found it beneficial and informative, and thank you all.
Well, thanks a lot, Javed, and hopefully we can see you again, and to help us sort out some of our technological challenges, probably at the Civil Service Registry and other departments of government that need improvement. As we move towards a more electronic system, or an electronic system where things are available on demand and not having St. Lucians to wait in lines for and waiting for days for a birth certificate, for example. Well, we want to thank you for being part of our program like every week. Those of you who got an opportunity to call in, thank you very much for being a part. And those of you who just listened, thank you for tuning into the show. We'll be back next week at the same time for another Newsmaker Live. But before that, we'll be here on the weekend, God willing, for the Press Club, where we break down the latest happenings for the past week. Program note, Delia Dolaw will be here tomorrow with her Dolaw Factor Live, 8:30 p.m. or only on DBS. Until the next time, I'm Clinton Reynolds. Do have a good one.